What if there was a way you could take an x-ray of your practice to see the subluxations that are causing your practice to dysfunction financially and therefore lose value? What if you could correct the dysfunction by implementing a few things right now, so when you sell 3, 5, 10 years down the road, you can receive way more money for your practice and retire with a bigger retirement fund? What if I told you that by implementing just 5 things, you could add an extra $106,000 to the value of your practice when you go to sell, like one of our clients did? After all the blood, sweat, and tears you put towards building your practice into what it is today, wouldn't you want to learn how to maximize it? Ever since stepping back from hands-on practice 14 years ago to devote my full-time energy and focus to coaching, my clients started asking me to help them value the practice. Since I couldn't find anything or anybody out there that was doing valuations that made sense to me, I decided to test my financial and business savvy and create a simple template for the valuation process. I repeatedly found my valuations were coming in within a few percentage points of what the practice would actually sell for in the marketplace. This gave me the confidence to move forward, all the while tweaking our formula to adapt to a changing economy and to stay connected to the heartbeat of the chiropractic profession. It didn't take long for that dedication to excellence to get noticed, as we were soon put on the preferred provider list for one of the biggest Canadian banking institutions, the Bank of Montreal. By keeping abreast of the marketplace, my team and I started noticing certain amplifiers that would allow a practice to increase its value substantially on the open market because it's so highly valued by incoming buyers. Now, there are dozens of variables that go into the exact valuation of your practice, but after studying 10 of the most recent practices we appraised, we came up with the top 5 factors that have the biggest influence on your practice value. Implement these 5 things and your practice could increase by an extra $106,000 when you intend to sell. At least that was New Leaf Chiropractic's experience after their valuation, our dear and respected client, Dr. J. Now, if you're a chiropractor who wants to stop throwing things at the wall and instead learn the strategies that have the biggest impact on your practice value, then you're in the right place. Not only will this increase the value on your selling price, but many of these factors will allow you to earn more in practice in the short term until you want to step back from regular hands-on practice. As Dr. J from New Leaf Chiropractic stated, other things are starting to change as a result of the goodwill tweaks I'm making in my office. My office flow is better. The team is working tighter as a unit. The marketing plan is bomb-proof, and as a second result, I'm adding and tweaking like I haven't done in years. We've renegotiated our lease, we tightened up staff meetings and quarterly reviews to increase communication and team harmony, and we fired some dead weight and hired only A-plus talent. Thus, increasing revenues, which wasn't even the initial goal. And no, you don't need to be doing 6 or 7 figures to influence and increase the selling price so drastically. In fact, many times it's the smaller practices that have the most potential for a huge increase in valuation. A recent practice we appraised was earning just north of $100,000 per year, but by changing 5 factors in this practice, he could add almost $19,000 in value, all the while improving the entire group practice he was an important part of. Stick around for the next few minutes as I share the 5 most important and leverageable factors that you can implement this year. Factor number 1. The first amplifier to consider is your team and their training. The reason this is so important from a valuation standpoint is that the doc who will be buying your practice is looking for a turnkey operation. If your staff are leaving with you, then the practice, quite frankly, loses a lot of its appeal. The business becomes much less turnkey with no staff to help run a tight ship. Most teams do stay, which is great for your valuation and the incoming buying doc, but a team is only as effective as the quality of the training they have received and/or continue to receive. Your team's level of training will increase your goodwill calculation by 1 point if they've been trained by you, but 2 points if they've been trained by a competent third-party company. And when your team is professionally trained, you can see how that would directly impact the practice in the short term. For example, our company CA training program even teaches the CA how to run healthcare classes for you. Talk about a partner in your business. Factor number 2. The second amplifier you want to address that has a huge impact on your goodwill is patient education. The better educated your patients are about the benefits of chiropractic, the higher the chances of them seeing the value of staying under care. It's all about your PVA, your patient visit average. It makes sense that the more times a patient comes in, the more revenue you earn per year, and therefore the more your practice is worth. But What this really means for a buyer is stability and reproducibility. A practice with a patient visit average of 10 is very unstable compared to a practice with a patient visit average of 50. The higher the PVA, the more revenue that can be projected, and the less emphasis on marketing is required. So what is your PVA, and what are you doing in the name of patient education? Factor number 3. The third amplifier is your internal systems. The more systemized your practice is, the more seamless it flows with or without you. The ultimate test for this is by taking a vacation. When I was in practice, I would take my family of 7 on trips around the world while earning money because I had systems that allowed any locum to come in and keep things running. So how are your systems? Bulletproof or not? Do you have a written operations manual of what needs to happen when you open the practice in the morning? How about when you close up? Are the outcomes that need to be achieved by every position on your team clearly written out and trained on repeatedly? Do you have written protocol on new patient visits, cancellations, finances? The highest valuations we've seen all seem to have one thing in common. The team ran the show, not the doc. Make your practice team-driven with documented policies and written protocols for everything so that a buyer could just step into a well-flowing business. Then take a vacation to really see where the holes are. Factor number 4. The fourth factor we look at is something most chiropractors have the biggest challenge with, and that is patient acquisition or marketing. A practice with a documented and strategic marketing plan is another factor that shows us your patient acquisition is reliable, and therefore, so are your revenues. There are 3 things we're looking at under the umbrella of marketing. The first is a documented marketing plan. Do you have a marketing calendar that shows when to run certain events, how often you use social media, and perhaps a Google Ads budget? A documented plan is the first important aspect of a marketing strategy, but we also look at whether or not you're tracking your return on investment for each individual marketing strategy. If you don't track where your patients come from, you don't know the return on investment for your advertising money. This goes for referrals, dinner talks, and every other aspect of your marketing plan. Track your numbers so you know your ROI and can know how worthwhile the marketing objectives are. This is important for you to know so you're not wasting money and time, but it also shows your buyer what they can do to see a positive return on their marketing budget. The third aspect of marketing is your practice website. In this day and age, you just can't ignore the importance of your online real estate. Do you have a website? How does it rank for keyword searches like chiropractor in your city? Is it a pretty website, or does it give a negative first impression? Do you have 5-star reviews on Google and Yelp? Again, if you don't track where new patients come from, then you won't know if your website is doing its job to produce new patients. This all ties back into the reproducibility of profits for a buying doc. But marketing obviously has an immediate impact on your short-term revenues as well. Factor number 5. The final factor with the biggest impact on your practice value is overhead. This factor has by far the most impact on the fate of your practice valuation. Unfortunately, we see docs with expenses that consume 60 to 80% of their revenues. And we're not just talking about hiding it from the tax man. That's crazy. Every 1% that you can reduce from your overhead can equal thousands of dollars in the long run, not only when it comes time to sell, but also in profitability for you and your family leading up to the sale. Sit down with your bookkeeper every month to see where your money is going and where you can trim spending without hurting your income. In the wise words of Peter Drucker, what gets measured gets managed, and what gets managed gets improved. I hope you can begin to see how these practice factors directly impact the short-term results and the long-term worth of your practice. Here are a couple more practice valuations we've updated to see what they could have sold for had they implemented these 5 simple factors like you're going to do. Here is some math on a recent valuation we did on a practice in Toronto, Ontario. Since the biggest opportunities are maximizing the goodwill checklist, and since this practice was currently at a 74% goodwill factor, if you made that 100%, that alone would add approximately $128,000 to the sale price. A practice appraisal we did for Bob, quite frankly, named so generic we can use it and still obey our confidentiality agreement, shows just by adding 6 small changes in his practice, he could add $90,400 to the sale price and make it way more attractive to a buyer. Not only would these docs have made more money in their bank account right now, but they could have been making much more money in their practice every month that they were still practicing. They will never know how much more money they could have in their bank account right now if they only knew what you know just a few years before they sold. The difference could have put one of their children through university or paid off a mortgage. They could have paid their staff better or at least offered better bonuses for their excellent contribution to the office. And who knows, I'll bet the relationship with their spouse would be better if they had less financial troubles to worry about. The ripple effect is so large, we never know how far-reaching it really is. What we're going to do for you so you can begin to put this information into action right away is to give you more insight and actionable steps with each one of these factors. Each week, you're going to receive an email from us where we're going to go deeper with each one of these amplifiers, providing more valuable information that you can use to improve your specific practice situation. At the end of the 5 weeks, we'll send you our goodwill checklist so you can see how you score on these 5 factors and the other factors that go into our valuation. But here at Full Circle, we're firm believers that you can't get somewhere new if you don't know where you're starting from. It's like a treasure map. Without a starting point or a mall directory blueprint, without the bright red pin that says, "You are here," you have to know where you're starting from. That's why we strongly encourage you to get a practice valuation today, even if you don't plan on selling for the next 3, 5, or maybe even up to 10 years. This is like an x-ray in your practice that will show you the holes in your practice that are causing you to lose current revenues and practice value. Once you know how much your practice is worth today, you can see exactly what your practice could be worth, and you'll also know exactly how to get there. Thus, the treasure map analogy. The service is $21.95, paid in Canadian dollars, but since we know you're serious about building the value of this asset, we're going to give you a bonus today as a thank you for getting this far into this video training. This video training and the follow-up emails will do nothing to increase the value of your practice and increase your current revenues if you do not take action. So if you invest in a practice valuation today, we're going to throw in a free coaching call with yours truly so you can make total sense of the valuation numbers, the opportunities in front of you. And since it's a coaching call, I'll take the time with you to break down the physical, financial, or mental barriers you have to implementing these changes and really growing your practice and serving your community at a higher level. It's what I do with chiropractic clients each and every day in my coaching practice, and I've been doing for the last 20 years. This call itself is a $500 value since that's what I currently charge for an hour of coaching. Here's what you need to do right now. There's a big yellow button below this video that says, "Show me the value of my practice." Once you click that, a new window will open where you can put a deposit for 40% of the investment price. That's all we require up front. Really easy. You can check out with credit card or PayPal, whichever one you're more comfortable with. Once we see your order come through, our team will prepare your forms and get these into your hands so you can let us know all about your business assets, location details, practice stats, flavor of practice, all of the many details that go into a modern practice valuation. This process takes about 4 to 10 hours on your part, depending upon how many assets you have in your practice, how structured your practice is, and how quickly you can get your hands on your most recent financial statements. Once we have the forms back from you, it takes us about 2 to 4 weeks to turn it around and get you the final dollar value your practice is worth today. You don't pay the rest of the investment until the process is complete. While slowing down and retiring may seem years away, so you may be wondering about the value of this investment today, I want you to remember that that's what this is about. This is an investment. Dr. J would spend $2K all day to learn how he can earn another $106,000 one day. You're getting something that most people will never be able to acquire, and that is clarity about your practice. It's never a bad time to appraise a chiropractic practice. There's a client I had a few years ago where the family called me in tears because the husband went to sleep one night and just never woke up. They didn't have an exit strategy prepared, didn't have the systems in place, and when I went to do the evaluation, sadly, they couldn't handle the overwhelm and just closed their doors. Besides, we highly encourage bringing an associate doc when preparing your exit strategy. If you don't know the value of the practice before taking one on, the doc will end up building value into your practice, which will build resentment down the road if they decide to buy you out. Don't take this process lightly and ignore what we're offering, because chances are high that if you don't get some skin in the game today, you're not going to have the incentive needed to make real changes. Then when it comes time to sell, you'll be in the exact same place you are right at this very moment. Right with the docs we mentioned earlier, who could have paid the rest of their mortgage or a child's schooling just with the difference in the practice valuation. And you can bet our valuation is airtight and validated on the market. We haven't had any problems with clients taking this to the bank for buyer funding, and the major banks have us on their trusted advisor list for this service, as we mentioned earlier. So, it's time to get the process started. Click the big yellow button below the video to invest $878, again payable in Canadian dollars, which is 40% of the total investment, and we'll get you the forms immediately. If you have any questions about this process, give me a call at our home office number, 705-495-3330, and we can see if it's a fit for you. Remember, we'll be sending you an email each week for the next 5 weeks where we'll show you how to take your practice from wherever it may be and make it more valuable based upon the top 5 factors we've covered today. So go ahead and click the button below, and we'll see you on the inside.